Hello, welcome everyone to the Canon R5 and R6 live creator showcase. We are so excited to be here. We have an awesome panel of creators joining us. So I will introduce you to who we've got with us. We have Irene Rudnyk. She is a portrait photographer, a YouTuber, and a Canon ambassador. She is well loved for her dreamy atmospheric portraits and her excellent teaching skills. Irene, welcome.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk about the new releases.
We're so glad you're here. Scott is a photographer and entrepreneur. He's the founder of Socality. He is known as a catalyst of community and someone who captures a sense of adventure in his images. Scott, welcome.
Hey everybody, I'm excited to see everybody joining from around the world. It is going to be a great night together.
It sure is. It's fun seeing some familiar faces in the chat, people who have been at some of our events. We've got Jonathan Zodoman. He is a photographer. He's a writer. He's known for his unique and emotive style of visual storytelling, especially through his portraiture. John, welcome.
Thanks. Usually I'm in the chat on all our workshops, so it's fun to be in front of the camera and talking to everybody today.
We finally get to see your beautiful face. It's been long overdue. We also have Atiba Jefferson. He is a commercial photographer and living legend known for his work in the skateboard, basketball, and music industries. Or maybe you recognize him from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. He's been taking my picture there for years. Atiba, welcome.
Thanks for having me. So excited.
We're glad you're here. And Genaro Arroyo, you might know him as Flaco. He is a cinematographer and Canon USA's professional market specialist. Today, he will be serving as our tech specialist on the panel. Welcome, Genaro.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. So in case someone is joining and they didn't get filled in on the news this morning, there's been some pretty big releases from Canon. Genaro, why don't you fill us in on what exactly is new today?
So for those of you that haven't gotten information yet, we released a few items actually earlier today. We released a few lenses, some of them being the RF 85mm 2.0, others being new compact telephoto lenses like the 600mm and the 800mm f11. But really, we're here to talk about the new two mirrorless cameras. The R6, incredibly fast, powerful new mirrorless system for photographer enthusiasts. And then my favorite, the R5, which really packs the power with the 8K RAW video.
Excellent. So we are so excited to be introducing these products and breaking them down. The creators that we have on our panel have actually used these cameras and they have some images that they've created that they're going to show you. We're not going to be showing any video today because Zoom is not conducive to great video quality. We actually can't show you how good it looks because of Zoom's capacity, but we're going to talk about what's possible. We're going to break down a bunch of different facets of these cameras and answer some questions, show you some examples, show you what these creators have made, and we're also going to be taking some live questions. So there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if you are on a computer or if you swipe right on your phone. You can type a question in there and I will be able to see it. We will not be able to get to all of them today, but I'll be going through there and taking out as many as we can for the creators. If you have a question specifically about a feature and how they engaged with it, or about their images and how they created them, or about the specifics of the gear. If you have a question that is Zoom related or more big picture, you can send that in the chat. We have Christina from our team. She's in there. I know John is in there, even though he's live. He's a great multitasker. So you can feel free to send any big picture questions to the chat. And Scott, if someone wants to get connected beyond this event, what are their options?
Hey guys, we're so excited for today and for tonight. And of course, the big release of the R5, which we've all been waiting for. So Socality is a creative community. We host events. Normally, when COVID's not happening, we bring people together, connecting them online and then together for live experiences. We are hoping to get back to that soon. And so stay on guard for that. But there's a lot of ways to get involved with us beyond this. So you can follow Socality and sign up online at socality.org and stay up to date on our live events. Plus, you can also do one of our workshops, which we also host online. We've been having great workshops during this time, so we're really excited about that. And about a year ago, Zach, Canon Canada came to us and partnered with us, and we've been working with them in so many great ways to bring people together, empower creatives. Usually at our live events, we have a whole bunch of Canon gear people can sign out and use, and we create unique experiences where people can create together and build community and connect and keep going to the next event, meeting more people, meeting more creatives. And so we're excited to get back to that. And we're so excited that tonight, for the launch of the R5, the R6, and all these other great products, to partner with Canon USA. It is just an incredible lineup who we have here tonight, and of course, Canon Canada, Canon USA. And so we want to make sure people are getting connected. Sign up online at socali.org. A few things I just want to mention real quick, Zach, is we really want to connect with you guys, and we really want to showcase you. And so if you want to grab your phones throughout tonight, and just take a screenshot of your setup of where you're at in the world. I can see in the chat, people are joining from all over the world, internationally. It's super exciting. So take a shot and make sure you tag Canon Canada and Canon USA and at Socality, and we can reshare your posts. And so we want to make sure that everybody's getting the love tonight. And of course, all the panelists who you've mentioned tonight, make sure you show them some love. And so that's a great way to get involved. And we're going to be throwing up links in the chat to pre-orders. I know a lot of people are, my DMs have been blowing up today. People are very excited to get their hands on this incredible product and the range of product, not just the R5. We mentioned a lot of products we're talking about tonight. We're going to be throwing links up how you can pre-order in Canada and the USA. And so you can get your hands on that. And also stay tuned for some, you can go to Canon Canada on their website, and you can check for the Creator Lab. And you can see some ways that the R5 is going to be coming to a city near you where you can try it out for your own self and get your hands on it. It's a beautiful, beautiful camera. And so stay tuned for that. So we're looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Zach. I'm a photographer myself, and I'm also the community manager at Socality. So anything you fire our way, I'll be able to engage with you and follow up, answer your questions, and reshare anything you share. So thanks for joining us tonight. First things first, let's get right to it. People want to know, how did you enjoy shooting with the camera? What was it like? So let's just hear a quick first impression from each of you and let us know what you did. You got a couple of days with an R5 or an R6. What did you do? Irene, what was it like for you?
Oh my God. I mean, first of all, I just recently moved from DSLR to mirrorless. So before that, I was in a little hunt for a perfect mirrorless, and I do love my Canon R, but these two cameras just completely exceeded my expectations when it comes to what I was looking for in a camera. So first of all, when I got it, when I opened it, the multi-controller joystick and the scroll wheel were the two things that I was missing from the R, and I'm so happy to see them back. The improved autofocusing, that amazing image quality, and the 4K video capabilities, like everything that you want in a camera.
That's so awesome. And Scott, what did you do with your camera? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking a little bit to it later, but I was so excited because I've shot with a 6D Mark II, and then now the R. And so having the R5 in my hands, I was, first of all, it was probably the most professional thing I feel like I've had in my hands. It just felt like such a beast. It was beautiful. It's so fast. It's so sharp. And having that joystick, I've never had that. And so having some of those elements that have been on the 5D Mark IV to have that was really exciting. So just for me, shooting normally what I shoot, landscape in the mountains, some lifestyle, I was just losing my mind about the image quality. And so that combined with the RF lenses was absolutely beautiful. So I'll be speaking a little bit more to image quality, but first impressions was this camera blew my mind.
Amazing. And John, how about you?
Honestly, I've been a bit of a DSLR holdout, so I've still been shooting my 5D4 for quite a while. And honestly, this was the first mirrorless I've held in a while that felt both familiar to what I love, and also just on a whole nother level. Sticking out into the desert and the Badlands in Alberta here and shoot some stuff that I'll be showing in a little bit. But yeah, it blew my mind across the board, and it was the first camera I've actually been excited to upgrade to in quite some time, probably since I got my 5D4. So really excited to see what everyone else is sharing tonight and kind of show a little bit of what we created.
That's great. And Atiba, what was your first impression and what did you do with your camera?
I mean, my first impression was the feel. I've experimented with mirrorless, but you know, I've been a DSLR dude, Mark IV, 5D dude, and I love it. I felt like the Mark IV was a camera I never needed to replace. And when I got the R5, the feel of it feels professional. And so many times with mirrorless, I feel like it feels like a toy, and this just had all that feeling and weight and quality, and the lenses felt great. And I mean, all the features are amazing that really help with shooting skateboarding and action and portrait. It's basically everything in one that I would want in a camera. So it's great.
That's awesome to hear. So we're going to break down a bunch of different categories. And the first one is the image quality of the R5. So Hanara, what is it that sets the R5 apart from other cameras that are available when it comes to image quality?
Well, the first one's going to be obviously the megapixel resolution. With the higher megapixels at 45 megapixels, you have a higher resolution, more detail, just better overall quality. But that's not the whole part. It's also the brand new Digic X processor. This is coming from the 1DX series, our top of the line flagship DSLR. And that's dramatically helping in processing all that data into giving you that better quality image to your card.
Amazing. So we're going to break down some examples of what that looked like practically. So first is going to be Irene, and I've got some of her photos handy. So Irene, tell us a little bit, how did these innovations, these changes impact your shooting experience practically with the R5?
Yeah, do we have the first slide? All right, so this is something I wanted to show you guys real quick. Again, like I love my Canon R, but I've noticed a slight better colors with the R6 and the R5. So these are the comparison. On the left, you have the Canon R, and on the right, you have the Canon R6. Now, the lighting might be slightly different. Like it was a little bit darker on the left image sense, and you can see it. But if you look at the skin tones, I could see already a big improvement, which was so nice. So you can see in the next slide that I put in there, what that gives me is just amazing colors from the start in the raw image. So again, you can see raw on the left, and then the edited image, as you can see, I barely had to touch it. The skin tones looked great straight out of the camera. So I just did a little bit of dodge and burn and a little bit of color correction, but overall it just makes my job so much easier. And I mean, I'm a person that loves doing a lot of editing, but that just made it so much easier. But then again, here's the example from the R5. If you do want to do a lot of extensive editing, you definitely can, because of the dynamic range of this camera and the quality of this camera. So here's some editing that I did for this picture. What happened was that the sun went under the cloud and I didn't have the chance to change my settings, so it got like really dark. But again, I was really, I was able to bring everything back super easy, and the skin looks great, the quality looks great. I can zoom in and you will still be able to see all of the amazing quality and how sharp it is. All right, what's the next one I have in there? Okay, there's another example of what you can do in editing. So I shoot a lot of backlit images, and if you have shot backlit images, you know that it's very hard to get nice light on the model. So usually what I do is I will just bring it back in Photoshop. So again, you can do some extensive research without losing any of the quality, retaining all of the detail, and the skin tones still look amazing. So I was super impressed with what I can do there. All right, these next examples here are taken with higher ISO. So I think I took them at ISO 6400 ISO. Again, this is like a real life test. I don't think I'll ever be shooting higher ISO unless I'm shooting like at nighttime. But the skin looked absolutely amazing. The grain was very minimal. And again, I can do some extensive retouch on the skin and on the colors without losing any of the quality again. So I was really impressed with how it handled all of the little tricky things I tested it with. All right, I think that's all I have. Oh, all right. So here are the comparison between the R5 and R6. So for me, personally, I'm still struggling to decide which one I personally want to get, because both of them are amazing and both of them have amazing quality. So the R5 on the left, R6 on the right. Again, if you're looking at these images online, it's hard to notice any difference, but when you're actually editing, you'll see a lot of difference here. But the point I'm trying to make here is that if you get the R6, your images will look online just as great as the R5. I really, really loved the quality of the images on both cameras. All right, I think I have now a few more images with the new lenses for the next slide. All right, so I was also able to test out the new RF 85mm f2 macro lens, and I'm normally a huge fan of fast lenses. I love my 85 1.2, but I was really pleasantly surprised with this little lens. First of all, it's very small, it's very light, and it's really well priced as well. And oh my god, it produced really, really amazing images. I think paired with the R6, it's a perfect combination. It worked really well for both close-up portraits and for full body shots. I shot some beauty stuff here. This was shot at f2, and I think they look really good. And then in the next slide, I think I have a little comparison. Can I get a next slide? Oh,
Yeah,
there we go.
Should be live. Yeah.
All right, so in the next slide, I did a little comparison between the 85 f2 macro and the 85 1.2 RF lenses. So as you can see, there is a big difference between the bokeh rendering and the softening of the background. But again, I kind of like both of them. I don't know which one I like more. Let me know in the comments what do you guys think. But I think the 85 stood up really, really well against the 1.2. And honestly, I'm kind of thinking of maybe getting this lens because it was that good. So I would highly, highly recommend this lens, especially for, again, like enthusiasts, people that just want to get into doing portraiture. It's really, really good price and awesome, sharp and colorful lens.
Thank you for that breakdown, Irene.
Yeah.
Those are some beautiful images.
Thank you. I think that's it for the image quality that I had. Is that at the end of my slides? Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, last thing. Sorry, guys. Another thing I want to just mention again while keeping on the budget. Oh, can we go back to yes? With keeping on the budget, what I also really, really enjoyed with the both R5 and the R6, and actually with the Canon R as well, is that they work really, really well with the EF lenses. So here are the two images shot on my 85mm 1.2 EF, and this is a Mark I. So this is my old, very slow lens, and it worked beautifully on both the R5 and the R6. I had no problems. It was able to recognize the eye. Of course, it's not as fast as the RF, but I think this is a great way for people that want to move from DSLRs. You can get the bodies and you can still keep your EF lenses if the RF lenses are a little bit too expensive for you at the moment. So you can easily, slowly move into mirrorless and still keep all of your old lenses. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Irene. Those are some beautiful examples. Scott, I have a question for you. As an outdoor landscape photographer, someone who captures a lot of adventure, what opportunities do the imaging capabilities of the R5 give you?
Yeah, it was so exciting because I live in Alberta, so I tend to shoot. I live an hour away from Banff National Park, so it tends to be my playground. And of course, they're just stunning lakes and mountains and mountain peaks, beautiful light, sunrises, sunsets. And so I was just excited. Like I said, I'm shooting with the R right now just to get out there. And we went and captured sunrise at Lake Louise, and we captured a sunset from the Banff gondola. And I was just excited to see the image quality with a 45 megapixel, to see the sharpness and just to see the detail that it was capturing. And so obviously took a lot of different images, and the light was just beautiful. And so if you just go back to the other slide. So here we were at Lake Louise. Obviously, if you just look at the detail of the water, and you can see every single detail from the water, the rocks, the mountains in the distance, just so beautiful. The clarity, the focus. With the 45 megapixel, obviously, if you are shooting, I've shot for commercial, billboard, print, and so the ability for print, shooting billboard, blowing up, obviously that comes in handy. But you can see the detail there is just so beautiful. And so, and I have to say, adding on the RF lenses with the R5, I saw in camera, just the quality, just in camera, I was losing my mind. I'm like, I can't wait to edit these because they look so good. I couldn't believe the detail. And so just that combined with the RF lenses, the quality was blowing my mind. So obviously all those megapixels help when it comes to printing, but just obviously there so you can see the colors of the sun and the light, and just so beautiful. And so we can go to the next one. And so you can see here, in addition to shooting a lot of landscape is always in my images, but lifestyle, so people in landscape. And so here we took up the Banff gondola at sunset, and just wanted to show you a raw. So there you go, raw and edited. And I can honestly say this photo is hardly edited, like literally, like probably minor adjustments, just bringing up some of the colors and shadows and everything. But as you can see, just from raw to edited, just the beauty of this. And so the sharpness, the detail of this camera along with the lens. And just look in the distance, like see those mountains in the background behind me, the light on those mountains, like that's absolutely insane. I posted this on my Instagram today, and people are just commenting like just the crispness of these photos is making me just pre-order. And so I think the just the image quality is exciting everybody here. And so yeah, and so this was really exciting, Zach. I got to use this new lens that's launched today as well. As we've talked about the R5, the R6, there's a lineup of some other new items coming out. And one of these lenses is the 100 to 500. And so this was awesome because I was standing at the Banff gondola, so you take up the gondola and you're overlooking the whole town of Banff, and it's just surrounded by mountains. And these mountains are far away. I just need to say that. These mountains are far in the distance. And so I just took a different couple of focal lengths here. So there's the 100, you can see it in the top left. And just to give you an idea of that landscape. And then I punched in a bit at 176, got a little closer, and then 400, I didn't even go all the way to 500, but you can see the detail right there of the peaks. You can see right there with even in the snow, those lines in the snow. This lens was absolutely insane. So we're trying to be discreet because we were shooting with the R5, but I have to say the 100 to 500 was a bit of a giveaway. It didn't look like very amateur. So it was definitely very professional. We were turning some heads, so we had to like turn the corner and try and hide. But as you can see, this lens was great. And obviously one other great thing, Zach, with the camera is the stabilization. No, just handheld, no tripod, with those lenses on. And to be able to zoom in as far as I was and to get that quality and the stabilization. So in addition to all the megapixels, just to have that stabilization, which I'm so excited, in body stabilization, everything on this camera. And so that this is at Lake Louise the next day. I threw on the 70-200, 2.8, the new one. And just look at this. So here I am at 70. So you can see on the right, the beautiful landscape of Lake Louise, these peaks, and then going in at 200 and just the color and the detail of the clouds and that I was blown away just in camera. But the detail of the clouds, the soft light, the colors are just beautiful. And so I was really excited to be able to play with not only the R5, but see it with the RF lenses. So all those megapixels, that in-body stabilization, and just handheld, just to be able to get the sharpness, the detail. I can honestly say I've been getting a lot of DMs. Just, it is one of the most exciting devices I've held in my hands. So I was just excited to create with it, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's images, but there's a few shots I took for you, but it was a really great experience.
Yeah, that's so awesome. It's fun to see those photos, Scott. I remember I called you right after you had shot. I said, how was it? And all you said was, bro, followed by a couple of seconds of you trying to find the words to say. And I see those images, and now I know why that was your reaction.
Yeah,
so we're going to do a couple of the questions here. They're pouring in a little faster than I expected. So I am definitely going to miss some of them. And if you asked one at the very beginning, I won't see it. So maybe ask it again. Hopefully it'll come towards the top. We're going to start with this one. This question's for you, Genaro. There's some different sensors here with the R5 and the R6. One's 45 megapixels. One is 20 megapixels. Why the difference, and what does that difference mean for someone who's deciding which one of those cameras would be a better fit for them?
So it's going to be going to what you tend to shoot. That's one thing I ask my clients all the time is, what do you photograph all day long? You know, are you like a enforcer where you're shooting at night the whole time? You do low light, you do available lighting, you're bumping up that ISO to the max, like some of my photojournalists that I work with. That 20 megapixel count is going to have a larger photodiode, which means it can do better in low light. It's just physics coming into play. But if my customer tells me I do prints, I'm a fine art sales, I do large 20 footers and I need that resolution, that's where the 45 comes into play. So that's going to be one of the first A or B option for the photographer is going to be, what is my output? Am I doing large? Am I doing major crops? Or do I need that low light capability that the 20 megapixel gives me?
Right on. I have a question here for someone who's, asking, in what ways does this improve on the R's abilities? So, and what do they have with this that they wouldn't have with an R? If someone had an R and they're happy with it, they're loving it. What would they be getting when they get an R5 or an R6?
The biggest difference you're going to realize is speed. That's going to be the first one. Actually, so as a pro rep, I tend to be the spoiled brat where I get to get one of each flavor, right? And I get to play with them and really use them to their T, try to break them in. The first thing I realized with the R5 and the R6 over the R was its speed. Velocity on both how fast it can shoot the images, and also the focusing, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, is how quickly it found both the face, the eye, or even the side of the face, and did an incredible job knowing my subject and keeping track of it during the entire sequence. So obviously you'll have better image quality with the higher ISOs, higher latitude on your exposure, but really the thing I noticed as just I need to take the camera and start shooting right away was the speed.
Right on. And here's a question for Scott. Scott, you showed that image from inside the gondola where you had some bright light and also some dark light. And when you were editing that, how did you find the camera handled the dynamic range and bringing up some shadows? Did you find that the image still looked the way you wanted it to after editing?
Yeah, it was awesome. Like I said, we didn't even need to put much editing into it. It was pretty simple. And so, with photos, you can dive in, then you pull up some shadows, and then you lose some other things. And for this, honestly, it captured so much detail. And so I found that it was really, really great. And so just noticing too, I just want to point out really quick, sorry, I'm multitasking. A lot of people are asking questions in the chat. Make sure you ask them in the Q&A. And so Zach can manage them there because there's so many good questions coming in. So sorry.
Yep. Right on. No, thanks for that. That's helpful. We're going to move along and talk about the speed. And I already mentioned that the speed is something that sets this camera apart. So the R5 can shoot fast. Exactly how fast is fast and how can it do it?
So the R5 and the R6 can shoot up to 20 photos per second electronically and 12 frames per second with a mechanical shutter. So you got both options. Already from the get-go, I've been getting already a lot of feedback and questions saying, if I can shoot that fast with electronic, why do I even want to bother with mechanical? And there's multiple reasons actually still. And one of them off the top of my head is stadium lighting, fluorescent lighting, halogen lighting, depending on where you're shooting, that flickering that some light source might have with any camera with using an electronic shutter, no matter who it is, you might see some flickering issues actually with that faster speed. So for those very tough situations, unique situations, that mechanical becomes a benefit. So the beauty with the camera is that you have both options. You can either go mechanical 12 or go full electronic at the 20.
Right on. And when I hear this, I think this is something that would be really helpful for someone who is shooting something like Atiba does. Atiba, you shoot skateboarding. Obviously, speed is going to be incredibly important for you. I'm going to pull your slides up here. And why don't you tell us about your experience shooting quickly with the R5?
Yeah, Hanaro brought up a very great point that with the flickering, having the option to shoot between mechanical and electronic is huge. In shooting skateboarding, sequences, which are frame by frame and continuous, is such a big part to what we shoot. Obviously having the perfect trigger timing is also a great thing, but having 20 frames per second is amazing because nothing is getting by you. I mean, you're almost seeing it real life with that many frames per second. So in this instance, when there is a peak action, when he is the highest he can be, I could just shoot a sequence and pull a frame from that. And that option is great to have it at 20. At 12, skateboarding can be very precise. You're still getting that frame. And that's, I've seen the evolution, from my first the EOS 1V, I remember, was such a fast film camera. And I've seen the progression, and that's what's so great about this body. So many times we have to have a body that has a big chip to shoot with, and then you have to have your second one to shoot sequences with. And this camera has both of them. And the option, like you said, with dealing with electronic versus mechanical shutter is great, because even at 12 frames per second, you're capturing a lot of stuff. So with both of those options, and 20 frames per second is just, it's all the options you would want, which is very reassuring when shooting something fast. And in shooting skateboarding, you don't want to make someone do something twice. You don't want to miss it. So having all those options won't make you miss anything.
Right on. And walk us through this specific sequence, and what was your experience like shooting this?
Yeah, this was great. I mean, it's funny, you know, Scott talking about hiding the camera. I had the same thing. Someone asked for, like, can I look at your camera? I'm like, no, we can't do that right now on the pandemic. But, you know, we're really, it was funny to break it out, but it was great. This has the adapter also, which is really great. This is the 8 to 15 fisheye, which performed great. And for me, this was just one of those instances. I just had to ask him to do the trick, do the error once, Leandre, and I was able to know, like, I didn't even have to stop and look to see if I got it, because I saw it rendering and knew it was there. So it was so amazing to be able to shoot that way. And honestly, shooting skating, you got to be kind of on your toes. And same with my documentary shooting. And that stuff is so great, because you can just wail on the camera and there you go. You know you're going to grab something great. So yeah, it's such a beautiful feature to have.
That's awesome. It's so cool to see this breakdown and see just how fast 20 frames per second is. You
Yeah,
hear the number.
I mean, we had to do 2 different slides for this because there is so many frames, you know, so that just goes to show you the options you're going to have. And there's a lot of creative stuff you could get going with that, with stitching. And, you know, it's always great to know that you can be able to pick and choose which frames you want to use, versus before with a slower camera, you had to use what you got. So
that's so true. And that applies, John, to what you do. You shoot portraits. You love to come up with some creative concepts. How did being able to shoot quickly impact your shooting experience with the R5?
Yeah, I had a chance to test drive it in the desert. When we got the camera, I was looking at the specs, and I just decided that I wanted to try and, you know, push it to the limit. Irene kind of showed a little bit of that with, you know, they're going to get into the autofocus stuff. But the 2 things that really jumped out to me was the combo. And I think Atiba will speak to it as well, but just the combo of the shooting speed with the autofocus. And as a portrait photographer, honestly, like, I go completely handheld. My big thing I'm always looking for is the frame and the composition. And, but I just haven't trusted the autofocus in the past. So this time around, I basically just committed to it, put it on the eye tracking, and was like, well, we're going to get what we're going to get. Either it's going to be as good as they say it is, or, you know, or it'll prove me wrong, kind of thing. And it delivered. I put up the 2 lenses I was shooting with on that first one. Zach, you just go back. Yeah. On the left, it's the RF85. And that was shot at like wide open at 1.2. And then on the right, a bunch of people have been asking about the adapters and how that works. And honestly, like 35, that's my kind of go-to lens. And so the one on the right was shot with the 35, and you can see, yeah, it performed just as good. Moving on to kind of the next ones, just similar. These are all 85 at 1.2. For me, it's just all about trying to capture emotion and movement. And I found I didn't even go up to 20. I liked what Hanaro said about the options when it comes to your speed, because the 12 was honestly more than enough for me. So all I really used was the options around 12. And I'll show you guys a couple more here on this next slide. We had a dancer, her name's Nardi, and she came out and she was doing a bunch of movements. And so I was just, again, trying to, this was about probably 12 frames per second with the adapter, just trying to capture a little bit of emotion, see if, you know, if we could still pull that, like that focus. And yeah, just super impressed. I think the big thing that just stood out again was the adapter was perfect, and the variability. I don't think we'd mentioned this before, but it's similar to what the M6 has and some of the newer Canon mirrorless cameras, which with the two different settings for the high speed. You can do a high speed and a high speed plus. And I've shot cameras before where it's like you have one setting that's slow and then one setting that's like super fast. And having the ability to really pick the speed based on what you're shooting. Because now we're at 45 megapixels. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd prefer not to cull through more than I absolutely have to at the end of the day. So if you can kind of pick the speed that suits what you're shooting, that really made a difference for me. Lastly, kind of like Irene, I decided let's play with some low light at the end. And so this was just kind of pushing it, and this will segue probably nice into their discussion on the autofocus, but push the camera. I think these were probably at 1.4 in the, you know, as the sun went down, and I just had a roto light, just like a one light, just kind of illuminating her face. But again, no problems with the focus, and, you know, just the overall, I think for me, the overall ability to be creative and combine the Ibis, the you know, variability in the shooting speed, the like almost perfect eye autofocus and tracking. Like I can just see the possibilities of like what that frees me up as a creator to do are really going to allow, you know, really allow me to take things to the next level. So yeah, I'm just, I'm pumped.
That's awesome, John. Thanks for sharing. I know I'm personally really excited to see what you continue to create with, you know, these new opportunities that this body gives you. We're going to take a couple questions on the continuous shooting speed before we move on to autofocus. So one of them I saw a couple times. Sonaro, you can speak to this. What is the maximum burst during continuous shooting?
So the maximum burst is going to be depending on your card. On the R6, you can use, thanks to the lower megapixel, and again, this can be one of those separators for an A or B camera for yourself. It can go from 1,000 or more internally testing. But basically what that means to us is that until your card fills up on the R6. That's basically with a compatible SD HC card. On the R5 with the higher resolution, obviously in a RAW mode, I believe on the CFast Express, we were at about 180. So at 20 frames per second, you're looking at about 9 seconds of a hold the entire time. And if 9 seconds isn't long for you, then, you know, that's another issue right there.
That is incredible. That is mind-blowing. What is the shutter durability on these cameras?
Another separator also. The our ratings right now that I've seen has been on the R6. It's about 300,000. We're rating it out for the shutter life. Almost double that on the R5 with 500,000, 500,000.
Incredible. And let's talk about the Ibis a little bit, the in-body image stabilization. What type of performance do the R5 and R6 have in that way?
So that's where the similarities can be the same on both sides, actually. Is that the Ibis system is the same on both models. So you're going to be going up to 8 stops of IS, depending on which lens you're utilizing. And right now we're currently testing and hopefully we're releasing more information on exactly what combination, what EF lens, what RF lens. Some of the questions I've been noticing already has been, will this work with my EF and the adapter? And yes, it will. And depending on which lens also. So, and how many stops that lens will gain from that in camera from the Ibis.
Right on. Thanks, Sonaro. And let's move on to talk about the autofocus performance. There's lots to talk about there. So tell us, what is special about the autofocusing abilities of the R5?
So it's a brand new generation of the dual pixel autofocus. It's a version 2. It's a more enhanced, more intelligent system than the previous mirrorless and even other DSLR cameras. It can not just eye detect and face detect, it can also do head detect. And that's one special, which means with the R5 especially, I can turn away up to like 50 to 60%, and it can still track ahead alongside with also an animal. It can actually do animal tracking also with cats, birds, dogs, etc. And a lot of this is thanks to the upgraded and updated deep learning system that we've installed into the processor. It's something that we brought in from the head hunch on the 1DX Mark III, where our engineers use just hundreds of thousands of images to study what you're framing at, so that it knows that that is a human being, that is an animal, so that it knows how to immediately track where you're trying to probably take a photo of.
Wow. That is incredible. So, Irene, you shoot portraits. You shoot with an extremely shallow depth of field in a lot of your work. Talk about how the autofocus capabilities allowed you to do what you want to do with your work.
Yeah. So for me, autofocusing is extremely, extremely important. Again, if I was gonna switch to this camera, the autofocusing had to be really, really good. And like you said, I shoot at 1.2 most of the time. And before with the DSLRs, getting that eye like really, really sharp, it wasn't like so much of a work, but it was something you have to think about. And I found that with the R5 and the R6, the autofocusing, like I didn't have to think about it at all. I knew that I could rely on the camera to get the eye super, super sharp, even at 1.2. So it made me a lot more relaxed. It made me focus on other things, focus, pun intended, on like composition and other things rather than thinking, oh, is eye going to be sharp? I have to make sure I have to go back. Um, Another thing that I did here, so I wanted to test it to kind of like the limits of the autofocusing. And so these pictures you see here, I did some light painting. By the way, this was my first time doing light painting, like ever, and it was really fun. So if you ever done something like this, if you're familiar how to do this, you would know that normally in your studio, you would turn on the lights, you would set your focus on the camera, then you would turn off all of the lights so it's like completely blackout dark. Then you would fire the shot and then you would do your light painting. So I wasn't in the studio, I was in my house. So it wasn't like completely blackout dark, but it was nearly blackout in the room. And I didn't have to turn on the light at all. So in pretty much almost complete darkness, I just let the camera find the focus, find the eye. And it was like extremely easy to do. I was honestly super impressed because I have not seen like a camera do this before. So yeah, in almost pitch black room, it was able to focus really well, and it was all sharp. Like every single image was sharp and every single image looked great. So yeah, on the next slide, I was also testing some other things, like normally for portraits, if you have anything in front of the lens or in the back of the lens, like branches and trees, it usually has a hard time trying to find the eye, trying to find the face. And like Nara just was talking about, I also did some testing with the model, like not facing the camera, so kind of looking away or looking to the side. And again, it was super easy. Like honestly, I didn't have to do anything. It's kind of crazy. I kind of feel like cheating a little bit because it just does the job for you. But yeah, over here we have like a full body shot. And if I zoom in, if I crop in really close, you will see all of the little details on the necklace, on her eyelashes. And this was shot at 1.2. So you'll see all of the amazing detail on this camera. Okay, I have the next slide. I think the next slide was, again, just showing the branches, and if you have anything in front of the lens. There we go. So yeah, in the first picture and in the third one, I positioned the model within a lot of different branches. And again, usually the camera will have a little bit of a trouble focusing on stuff that's in front of the camera, but I absolutely love doing it for portraits because it adds a really nice visual interest. And again, I had absolutely no problems getting these images sharp, and it wasn't trying to focus on the leaves or anything else in front of the camera. Like in the second shot, I have this big fence in the front, and again, it absolutely had no trouble focusing. So I am extremely impressed with the autofocusing. Oh, the next slide was actually pretty fun. So this was taken by my husband, who's not a photographer, and this was on the 50mm 1.2 RF. And again, 1.2, he's not a photographer, and he was able to get my eyes like super sharp in every single image. So honestly, you don't even have to be a photographer to get the eyes sharp on this. That's how great it works. And then I think the very last slide, I have my dog Luna. There she is. So I also wanted to test out the animal autofocus. And again, both of these are shot at 1.2. The eyes are super sharp. Again, I have no complaints. Luna is not a model. Like, she does not like to stay still. She was moving a lot, and yeah, I was able to get these really cute images. So I'm excited about the animal autofocusing as well.
That's so cool, Irene. And one thing I really love about what you showed us is how much this camera can perform when it's pushed, you know, because it would be easy to show the autofocus in, you know, a perfect environment and say, oh, these turned out crisp. But to see that you shot, you know, in the dark, or gave it to someone who wasn't a photographer, shot an animal, shot with things in the way, and these all turned out tack sharp, absolutely beautiful. It's a big testament to what's possible.
You know, like I said, autofocusing for me is probably one of the most important things. So for me as a consumer as well, I wanted to test it just for myself to see as well, you know, is it worth for me to get those R5s and or the R6? And honestly, like I said, I'm extremely, extremely impressed.
That's really cool. That segues into what we want to talk about next, because as I talked to Atiba about autofocus, you know, trust is a big thing for you. And I know you typically stay away from tracking autofocus. You know, you'd rather handle it on your own. How did the R5's autofocus perform during your field test?
I mean, for me, this is probably the most prime example of how great it really is. You know, seeing the progression of autofocus over the years, you know, it's come to some pretty amazing things, but I still always feel the tracking thing. And you know, I wasn't able to use this for basketball right now, but in basketball, that's where I really started studying tracking autofocus, is shooting NBA games, and you know, when people are coming down court. And I tried to take it to skating, and a lot of times the autofocus would get fooled. And in this instance, I'm combining both the high-speed continuous shooting mixed with the autofocus, right? So in a perfect world, I'm just going to grab a still frame from this, which would be the middle photo. But I want to get the whole sequence to have both options. And I was so blown away, because normally for me, when action is moving towards the camera and the subject is getting bigger, that's when it gets fooled more. If I track side to side action, that's when I actually kind of can follow it easier. So this just was amazing. And you can see there's a branch in the foreground, and it just stayed so dead locked on to my subject that, you know, it made it really fun. And knowing that I can always have that option. I'm a back button autofocus person, so I can turn it on and off. That's how we do in the games. So, you know, my camera thinks it's on, but only when I hit that button. And having that option, for me, being a shooter who shoots, you know, documentary style of people moving, I love having that option. So the performance was just amazing in an action situation. I absolutely was just blown away and impressed.
And once again, this is an example of a camera doing something that would really be, you know, supposedly the hardest for it to do, yet pulled it off excellently.
Yeah, and that was like no problem, because the problem is if my autofocus had messed up and I had to ask the skater to do it again and he got hurt, that would be an issue. So you really have to be able to rely on these features in shooting skating to keep people from getting injured.
And you also shot a portrait with this with autofocus.
Yes. And for me, portrait shooting, it's kind of the same thing. Shooting portraits. Do you want to pull that one? I know. Here we go. We have all those frames at 20 frames per second, people. Look how great that is. Do you want to go to the portrait, or?
Yeah, just loading up here. Sorry.
No problem. Show everybody these images. But the thing with, especially shooting athletes, portraiture with athletes, musicians, and artists, they don't like their picture to be taken. So I want to be as fast as I can be when I do that. And, you know, if the eye is in focus, the photo's in focus is always like a rule of thumb I was taught. So a lot of times I get worried, you know, when shooting 1, 2, you know, wide open, if there's something in the foreground. That's why I put, this is the great Tony Hawk, and I used his skateboard in the foreground to kind of show that depth of field focus. And, you know, it was so dead on his eye. It was amazing, you know, because a lot of times I've seen the progression of autofocus, and we've seen the struggle where that might be on his ear and not on his eyeball. So the face recognition ability was, I mean, it's great because I could shoot like really quickly. You know, you could get this image in 60 seconds easily. And knowing that that focus, I don't have to spend, you know, 20 of that focusing on his eye, and being able to hit one button gets me that much more frames. The faster the camera performs, the faster and more photos I'm gonna get.
That's awesome. And this photo is also one that you used on the Pro 300 printer behind you.
Yes.
Why don't you show us how that turned out?
300 behind me. Here's a
There it
print.
is.
I am a Pro 1000 guy. I really love, I grew up in the dark room. Printing photos is a huge thing for me. And, you know, I've been using the Pro 1000 for a couple years. And I was so lucky you guys sent me this one to work with. And it is great. It's compact, it's fast, it's light, and it has all the bells and whistles of the 1000 and a nice compact printer. And just the quality is so great, and able to do 13 by 19 inches is amazing. And I tested all the different, you know, matte and luster, and did all the comparisons, and it just blew me away. I mean, these are images, you know, that you can sell as a photographer. These are prints that you can hold your own show with. I mean, the quality is amazing. It's really great.
I think there might be an auction in the chat right now for those prints. Genaro, talk to us a little bit about the Pro 300. What does it do? Why is it so excellent? Those prints were incredible. How is it possible that a printer that small is cranking out that quality?
Is the Pro Lucia ink system. That's basically what brings the life, you know, from the paper. You're looking at the same technology that we're bringing down from the Pro 1000, 2000, 4000. I'm talking about printers that usually cost you $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 actually, and can give you some really large prints. But with the 300s, our response to the individual who, I love a 1000, but it just looks a little bit too big, and it might be a bit too heavy for what I need or what I want to print and sell to my customer, or to even have at home or in a classroom. So with the Pro 300, you have a 10 ink system that you can interchange very easily, easy to do color control. There's a dedicated software inside, so that for those of you that are scared of printing and always say like, it never matches my screen. That's always the biggest comments I get from a lot of my photographers or printer people who are just kind of get into it. It's warmer, it's colder, it's not as bright as the printer. It has software in it, just like our other Pro series, where you can color matrix print out and actually dial it in without using a third-party device if you can afford those. So the pigment, the system coming down from the 1000 is really what's making it come to life.
Right on. And we are going to take a couple questions about the autofocus here. And there's a couple questions about the autofocus, or the focus stacking and what's possible there. So Genaro, what is available in terms of focus stacking possibilities?
So you're looking at the same focus stacking as we introduced back in the day with the RP, if my knowledge serves me well. So both the 5 and the 6, R5 and the R6 will have focus stacking. And in the menu settings for the focus stacking, you can also tell it how many images and the increments of the gap as is refocusing during that entire sequence, which then you can put them post all together using RDPP software or a third-party software manually if you want to.
Right on. That's a lot of options. And we heard about the animal eye focus, the eye autofocus, the head autofocus. What is the full range of options when someone's choosing what type of autofocus they'd like to use?
So I'm guessing the question is like, if you can tell it exactly what you want it to follow. If I'm getting the question correctly, you can actually tell the camera if it's a face head priority, animal priority, or no priority. So those are your 3 options you can pick depending on what's going on in your scene.
Right on. That's great. And we're going to talk a little bit about video. There's a lot of questions coming in about video. And like I mentioned at the beginning, unfortunately, as much as we wish that we could, we can't show video on Zoom because it just cannot keep up with the quality, and we can't do it justice. There's going to be plenty available online. I know Irene actually has a video that's going on YouTube. You can feel free to link that in the chat, Irene, and people can find it and watch in full quality what's possible. Genaro, there's been a lot of buzz about the video capabilities. What can this camera do?
So on the R5 is really where I was really excited when we heard about the R5 internally, is the 8K raw video. I come from a cinema background. I'm big on the resolutions, the frame rates, the color correcting. That's the world I came from. So the 8K raw, the first mirrorless system that gives you that capability straight to a CF Express card is truly incredible. And it's a lot of data. It truly is. So because it's a lot of data, the added benefit also with the R5 is that you can have a proxy-like workflow. So what it can actually do is shoot an 8K RAW on my CF Express, and then shoot a 4K compressed to the other media, to the SD, over to the other media, and then actually link them later on in post. So for those that are saying like, oh, 8K is a lot of footage, I don't have the system to edit everything, it's like, well, you can actually dual record at the same time 2 different formats, and then relink them later on. The other benefit, obviously, also is the proxy, the 8K RAW, and the 4K 120. So higher frame rates, definitely slow motion, I love to capture.
That is incredible. You know, as some of the rumors started coming out about what this camera could do, I think a lot of people were, I would say, cautiously optimistic, where, you know, if that's true, this is going to change everything. You know, and it's exciting to be on the other side of it, where now we can say, yeah, it's true. Here it is. Try it out. And Irene, you tried it out, and as a YouTuber, someone who makes some videos, you mentioned that trying out the video is one of the coolest things about the R5. Talk a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, disclaimer, I'm not a videographer at all. I only do video for my YouTube channel, but I do love shooting little cinematic footage. And I don't have a gimbal for the big setup that I usually use. So I shoot all of the footage that you see on my YouTube videos, the cinematic stuff, handheld. And most of it is also shot with the 85mm 1.2, which is a super, super heavy lens. So having that image stabilization for video was absolutely incredible. So I was able to shoot some really, really amazing footage, again, handheld, with the 85mm 1.2 RF, which is a super heavy lens, and with no problems. Like, the footage looks super smooth. I can slow it down to have that nice cinematic slow kind of move to it. With the R5 4K 120, like, that's super amazing. I can shoot some really, really like beautiful B-roll. So yeah, I again super impressed with what I could do without having any professional equipment, just all done in camera. And again, on my YouTube channel, you can see, I think Jonathan put the link to the YouTube channel, to the YouTube video. You can see a comparison of video with stabilization and without the stabilization, and you can see how much of a difference it makes. So I'm super happy with that.
That's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to watching that video. Hanaro, you're a cinematographer. What excites you about this camera when you imagine using it for your work?
The 4K RAW. That's obviously the first one, because it's not just being able to capture 4K and being able to capture in RAW, so you can do major color correction in post to really get the look and feel that you want for your final piece. You can also do major cropping in post for that, from that 8K image into a 4K or HD image. Do extreme stabilization if you want to do in post softwares. For vlogging also, actually, it also has the vertical video tagging, which basically means that when I'm shooting as a vertical position, when I import it to my nonlinear editing system or to the computer, it's already flipped for me, ready to be edited in that direction, so that I can put on Instagram as quickly as possible. The dual pixel autofocus. I was a big person of just a real camera operator, always does manual tracking with a follow focus device. You know, that's a real shooter does it. No, I'm a total sucker for dual pixel. Like, makes my life a lot easier, and I get the shot. I won't have to take 25 for the next one, right? And then the proxy workflow. I believe that was a great addition from our engineers for that more cinema-centric individual, where I want that 8K, I want the capability, but I don't have the laptop or the computer to handle it yet. That 4K proxy-like really would help with their workflow.
That's awesome. And Atiba, you've shot some commercial video over the years. Tell us, what about the R5 is interesting to you?
I mean, for me, I mean, there's a lot of options that are really great. For skateboarding, you know, 120 frames is great, because that slow-mo just looks so beautiful. And before, in the film days, when you had to use crazy high-speed cameras and stuff like that. It's just built in your hand. And that's the beauty of this camera, I think, for anyone who loves shooting both stills and video. Just, you know, being able to have such high resolution video, you know, just like you said, like punching in on it and being able to like steady cam, if you don't have a lens that's long enough, being able to have such a high resolution raw image is great, because coming from stills and always being able to work in that world, but when I transition to video and do that, I'm like, what, it's not in raw? Oh, we didn't expose it properly. Oh, we can't make it look like this. So having those video capabilities with this camera is amazing. I mean, it literally is the perfect combo of an amazing workhorse between still and video, all packaged into one.
That's awesome to hear. We've got a couple, actually a ton of video questions. We're going to get through as many as we can. If I'm missing your question, I'm sorry. The thing's actually moving so quick, I can hardly read them. But one that has come up a few times is about the overheating. So how, you know, when we hear about these big files, like 4K 120 or 8K video, how long can this camera film like that before it overheats? And Aro, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so again, we have to be real about this. It's not like one of our cinema cameras where you have an intake fan taking in constant cool air and taking out the heat from the processor, sensor, and everything else. After a while, if there's no way of it cooling down, it will overheat. So if you're shooting at 8K RAW, internally, it can record up to 20 minutes before it stops. Now, that doesn't mean that it will overheat in 20 minutes. It can keep going. It depends really on the conditions you're in. If I'm shooting inside of a studio where it's well air-conditioned, it'll probably last dramatically longer compared to if I'm going out to the Mojave on a hot summer day, which you really shouldn't at all. So it's going to depend on your conditions. Now, in the camera, though, there is a heat resistance or control option, which basically what it does is that it doesn't lower your resolution or capability of the camera. It will actually lower the resolution and the refresh rate of the viewfinder and a few little extra things to try and lower the amount of processing going on inside the camera, so that that little wall threshold is pushed further back while you're filming something with the camera.
Right on. What codecs do these cameras use?
So depending on the resolution, depending on the bit, if you're from 8 to 12 bit or you're shooting RAW or not, you're looking at MPEG-4, HVEC, so basically H.264, H.265 codec, and then our Canon RAW media for the 8K RAW.
Right on it. And someone was wondering, does this camera offer a clean HDMI output?
Yes, both of them offer a 422 10-bit clean HDMI output.
Okay,
both the
right
5
on.
and the 6.
And here we go. What are the RAW video options? Someone says only 8K, any compression options? Can either camera do RAW via external recorder? So when it comes to RAW, what different options do you have?
So technically speaking, going out the HDMI is not RAW because it's still a 422 type of signal coming out from the HDMI, and it's maxed out at 4K at 60 frames per second. So if you want 8K, it's going to have to be to the media, to the card itself.
Right on.
And so, but a second thing to be aware of also, and this could be a factor for a customer deciding between the 5 or the 6, is on the 5, I can actually go both on the card and record while having an external recorder out the HDMI and record that at the same time. On the R6 is where it kind of separates themselves a little bit between that more workhorse and enthusiast. It's either one or the other. You can record out or record to the card.
Right on. In terms of, you know, image quality, which is both the resolution and the quality and the color depth, how would the R5 compare to the C500 Mark II?
Ah, yes. So they're going to be kind of similar, but at the same time, not quite. There's a difference in the cinema sensors. I like to tell a lot of my customers is if you do cinema work, if 90% of your work is cinema capture, features, commercial, stuff like that, you really want to look at the cinema line. Beautiful video. They're dedicated for that, and it gives you a different level of quality. But where it does match with the R5 and the C300 series, it's going to be the Canon log. It's going to help you sync both images in a non-linear editing software later on to make them do a color match. The 4K footage is an actual oversampling, which is great. There's two 4Ks actually in the R5. There's 4K and 4K HQ. So 4K is just 4K, but 4K HQ is actually taking the 8K information, oversampling it back down to the 4K, giving you that more true RGB. And that's kind of getting closer to what our cinema cameras do and what we engineered back in the day with the original C300s.
Wow, that's very impressive. Can you comment on the ability to extract a still from an 8K video? Is that an option somebody has?
Yeah, so you can do that in Premiere Pro and many softwares. Actually, we just drop it to the timeline, grab a still frame. 8K, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the group, I think it's a 35, 37 megapixel image. So technically speaking, I can shoot 30 to 60 type of frame per second, at that much of a resolution. But if you are going to shoot for stills, you want to control your shutter speed. You might want to have it higher than usual, stuff to be aware about. But yes, you can pull the frame using the softwares.
Right on. And we have some questions about the rolling shutter performance, both in photo and in video. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's one thing that we were testing on dramatically with the beta models, with the bodies that I have right now. This is still a pre-production unit. So as what I can say right now, there is less of a rolling shutter. This includes the 8K, because I know that was a big concern to a lot of my clients, on the R5 and the R6, especially the R5, when compared to the previous DSLRs.
Right on. So we're going to move away from some of the video specific questions and just go to general questions, because there's some that don't fit, necessarily neatly into the categories we've addressed so far. But if there's one about video that kind of comes to the top here, we'll take that as well. One that's come up a few times is the dust and water resistance. Obviously, a part of that is going to be on the lens that someone is using. So Genaro, maybe speak to both the new lenses and the new bodies. What kind of dust and water resistance is available?
So obviously, with a lot of the newer L glass lenses, they are more weather sealed. Now, some are not, so be aware of that. When it comes down to the bodies of the R5 and R6, you're looking at the same type of weather sealing as that of like the 5D Mark IV. So incredibly well weather sealed. If the question is it as weather sealed as a 1DX? Can't really say yes to that, mainly because one thing the 1DX is special is that it's a uni-body system. It's like just a brick of a steel camera with holes cut out from the center. So it's a whole different design, but it's very weather sealed.
Right on. And what kind of card slots or media do these cameras use?
So on the R5, the CF Express and SD, and on the R6, dual SD.
Right on. Sorry, I've got one here. I had it written down and I'm just going, oh, that's what it was. Sorry, the control ring. What new functionalities do the control rings offer?
So the control ring still has the same functionality where you can program to your aperture, your ISO, shutter speed, program to different focus point spots as well. So it's highly customizable in the menu of what type of functionality you want to get out of that control dial, the control ring on the lens.
Right on. And we have a question about the cloud function to be able to get things from your device, from the camera body over to your device. Talk a little bit about what's possible there.
So it's a multi-step process where once you do get the camera, you register the camera to our cloud service, you download the app, and basically what it allows you to do is that once you log in your account, you put in your information, your login, etc. Then as I'm walking around throughout the day, I can just take a photo, and then if I want to upload it to that social media feed or to that folder online, I can just use the app on my hotspot as my phone, log onto my phone as a hotspot, and then send it over wirelessly and hit send.
That's incredibly easy. When it comes to the battery life of these cameras, what could one expect?
So on the battery life, you're looking at about almost the same as the R, to be quite honest. In the sense of stills, I believe it was about 320 photos on a charge of one charge battery. That's in normal conditions. Again, that varies on what you consider normal. For video, you got about an hour to 10 to 20 minutes. So an hour to 10 minutes of continuous video shooting on one battery, on both bodies.
Right on. And speaking of both bodies, I have a question for Irene, because you've tried them both. What are some of the differences you notice, just kind of from first impressions, holding them in your hands, to shooting with them? Can you just describe them both to someone who hasn't seen either of them physically?
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about the physical appearance of the cameras, are both very similar. But one thing, it's different that we don't have the mode function where you can, how like on the R you have the mode function where you can switch between the picture and the video. On the R6 we don't have that. And I remember when I got the R, I thought that that's like something that I don't really need. But now that I've been using it for so long, I actually really like that function. And that's something I do really like about the R5, that it has the mode switching and the little view at the top. Now, if we're talking about just the cameras, I mean, for me, they both have the amazing autofocusing. They both have great image quality. They both have really cool video capabilities. The biggest difference for me as a portrait photographer is the megapixels of the two cameras, right? There's a huge difference between the 45 and 20 megapixels, and you really can see it in the images. And I mean, it's both, they're both great, and they're both for different kind of photographer, right? Again, like for myself, I'm still struggling to figure out which one I prefer. I like both of them a lot. With the R5, the pros is that you can crop in, you know, really close, so you can see all the amazing detail. The dynamic range is amazing, but at the same time, I did notice that I have to spend longer in editing, and I almost had to adjust to these files because I'm not used to editing such big files. Whereas with the R6, it felt very, very familiar, and I'm coming from the 5D Mark III, which has a very similar, the 5D Mark III, I think, is 22 megapixels. So it felt very similar. The quality felt kind of the same, but with all of the added benefits of the mirrorless, you know, the EVF, the autofocusing, the video, all that good stuff. So it's really, it's up to everyone personally to see what works for them. I think, again, both of them have pros and cons, and both of them have the things that I was personally looking for. Again, the autofocusing, the EVF, and the video 4K capabilities.
And can you talk a little bit about the difference in viewfinder resolution between those two?
Yeah, to be honest, I know that there is a difference between them, but as just using them, I personally did not notice a huge difference. Again, maybe my eyes are just really good. So, but I did notice one thing is that the EVF feels really nice and comfortable. I have used some other mirrorless cameras, and you know, if you shoot for a long time on the mirrorless and you're using EVF for a long time, your eyes do get tired. And with the R5 specifically, I did not feel tired, like, at all. I use the EVF most of the time because, again, I'm used to the DSLRs. I like having the camera close to my eye. So yeah, it felt really, really comfortable. The colors look great, and the exposure looked great as well. So essentially what I was seeing in the electronic viewfinder, that's the kind of image I was getting.
Right on. And Scott, you've used the R as your primary camera right now, and then you use the R5. When you pick up the R5, how does the weight and the general ergonomics and feel compare from R to R5 for you?
Yeah, the weight and the size between the R and the R5 is actually very similar. So it's probably, I think we did a comparison, pretty much similar in size and weight. So there's not much of a change there. So if you have the R, you're going to feel pretty comfortable with the R5, which is incredible that you can pack that much power into something. But yeah, it pretty much will be similar in size.
Right on. And John, if I remember correct, you used both EF and R lenses on the R5 during your shoot. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. And
talk about the autofocus there. So you have an EF lens on there with an adapter, and then you have the R lens, which is mounted natively. How is each one's autofocus performance?
I didn't see a difference. Like it was equally as good. At least it seemed that way. Like with the adapters, it was. I mean, I think it's going to be lens specific. I was obviously a little bit, right? Like, I mean, if you were shooting with one of the really old lenses, you're probably going to see it, you know, it might be a little slower than, you know, than the newer EF lenses. Cause I was shooting with the 35 Mark II, which is it's a fairly new EF lens. And Nara might be able to speak to that too, but in general, I saw almost zero performance, like no performance difference between at least the 35 and the 85 RF that I was shooting.
And the fact that you didn't see any kind of quality difference or performance difference, it's not a surprise, because actually we call them an adapter, obviously, but really I like to call them a mount. Because an adapter, traditionally speaking, you lose something. You lose some autofocusing, some lights, you know, it gets a little bit darker. With our adapters, you don't lose a single f-stop. You don't lose any communication actually between the EF to the RF. So the performance will be the same as if you just put that on an EF onto an EF mount on any of the previous DSLRs. So you shouldn't actually see any quality loss or performance difference.
I would actually add to that real quick that, again, like if we compare the way I was using the 85, my old Mark 1 on the DSLR, and I would have about maybe 75% images sharp, and then the 30 would be kind of blurry at 1.2. With using that same lens on the now new mirrorless bodies with the adapter, every single picture is sharp. So like, that's crazy to me, because that lens, everyone knows how slow it is. Like, it's a gorgeous, beautiful lens, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it, but it's a slow lens, and it worked absolutely amazing on the new mirrorless body. So like, that's crazy to me.
That is incredible. And Hanaro, can you touch on a little bit about the dynamic range with the R5?
So some guy know all the information on the exact dynamic range, but since you can shoot in Canon log, you're definitely hitting that 14, 15 stop capability with on the video side. You also have the capability with the 15 stops when you shoot in PQ mode, which is that more higher dynamic range a feature you can enable inside the camera. So right now we're totally saying you can definitely hit that 15 plus stops on the dynamic range with the correct mode enabled.
Right on. Does Ibis work with older EF lenses?
So yes, it does work with older EF lenses. Now, if the question is specifically on which one, with specifically how many stops, that should be answered in the coming weeks.
Right on. And Atiba, there's a question specifically for your portrait that you printed out with Tony. If you could show us again and then just answer what lens you used to shoot that one.
Oh, for this?
Yeah.
I used the, sorry, getting a little flare from all the lights, all the big studio lights I have in here. Just kidding. For that, I used the 50 RF 1.2. And I just, I was probably 400 ISO at a fairly high shutter. It was outdoors. I had a black seamless. And yeah, it was great. It was just like, the autofocus tracking on the eye is amazing. So yeah, that to me is such a nice setup. That's one of my favorite portrait setups, is a 50 1.2. And like Irene said, so many times you want to shoot all the way open to have that fall off in the depth of field, and then you just get back and you look at things. Especially a lot of times you'll think they'll look good in the camera, but then you get home and you're like, uh-oh. So this was something that I wasn't having a problem with. It was great.
Right on. Yeah, it turned out beautifully. And that's something that has really stood out to me, seeing a lot of these images. That one and some of Irene's as well, is, wide open at 1.2 and all sorts of different conditions. We're seeing this autofocus do exactly what you would hope it would do, which has been really cool to see. In order to wrap up here, I'd love to hear just some closing observations as a creative who has used this gear. What is something that you're really looking forward to when you imagine, what you could do going forward? Each of you only had the gear for, a limited amount of time during a pandemic. So there was only really so much you could do with it. But when you imagine looking into the future with some of those barriers taken away, Scott, first, what are you excited about creating with this gear?
I think a couple of things, like obviously the frames per second, just how fast it is, how sharp it is. When you're out sometimes, you're grabbing photos so fast, and the fact that it's grabbing such sharp images so fast. I'm just excited to get out there and create, and obviously seeing some of the images tonight from these incredible photographers, pushing yourself to create new concepts, new ideas, and to keep dreaming, to keep creating, and to shoot what you love, but to push yourself past and realize you've got great tools in your hands, but also to keep getting inspired by other creators. So I'm just looking forward to shooting more and creating more, and maybe even trying my hand at video. I do a lot of photography, but maybe I have to do some video, guys.
Amazing. I'd watch them. Irene, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, just like Scott said, I'm actually really excited about the video and just shooting those little cinematic clips with the image stabilization. I was like thinking to myself, okay, now I want to shoot some more really nice clips with 1.2 with a crazy creamy background. I'm excited about the low light capabilities. I've been wanting to shoot at night with like neon signs and just like downtown for a while. I haven't done that yet. I'm excited about the autofocusing. Again, I don't have to now think about this at all. Like, I go, I shoot, I just set it to eye detection, face detection, and that's it. And I know and I trust that every single image is going to be sharp. So yeah, I'm excited that I finally was able to find a mirrorless camera that there's like everything that I want in it. Because for the longest time, I was trying out different brands, different models, and there would always be something that was a little bit not here, or like over here, just maybe I need a little bit more of this. But again, with this new release, I am super happy. I can't think of something that I don't like about both of these cameras. So just overall really excited. Hopefully I can get them soon back. Right now I have to still shoot on my R, and I'm ready to go back to the R5 or R6.
Right on. Thanks, Irene. Atiba, what are you looking forward to?
I mean, there's so much. Like Irene said, this is a new world for mirrorless. I never switched over to the R, but I've tried other brands and stuff. And, I've shot with Canon for over 20 years. And, digitals, I've, still have my original EOS 1D 4 megapixels. So for me, I've been watching this change and grow, and I really want to do mirrorless. There's a lot of features about being able to be silent that I love, and I've tried it over and over, and things have just failed. And this is the first time, with the short time that I got to spend with the R5, that it problem solved all those things. From the way it felt, sometimes I'm like, it feels like a toy. I don't like that. To what the image is, to the lenses. I mean, these RF lenses are mind-blowing, and I love progression. My career has always been about change and just keeping it moving. And this camera, it gets me. I'm always excited about photography, but like having new gear and trying new things changes the way you shoot your photos and changes the way your photos look. And I think the great thing about this camera is, whether you're shooting sports, whether you're shooting journalism, whether you're shooting weddings, being fast is the best thing about photography. And because we are catching a millisecond, and this camera is just going to make that even easier and more efficient. So yeah, I mean, I could geek out about the features over and over, because even the R6, I'm always in low light. So that is one thing that I'm interested in. And so, yeah, it's a huge list of what's exciting about both of these cameras and the Pro 300. So.
Right on. And then, Genaro, I'm actually going to sneak in a few last second questions here, because there are a couple that came up in the chat. I really wanted to know. So I'm sorry if I missed yours and others. They want to know if the R5 has a GPS built in.
No, so that's gonna be one differential between like the 1DX series, but it is compatible with our wireless communication. So you can use our extra GPS adapter that you can attach on. It'll be compatible with that for your geotagging, or you can connect Bluetooth wirelessly through your phone and geotag using the data off of your phone. So you do have that method. Great.
And then secondly, does the R5 do 120 frames per second at 1080?
No, only in 4K.
In 4K, right on.
On the R5, the R6 can do the HD in 120.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'll ask you the same question, Genaro. What are you looking forward to about using this gear as a creative person?
It's been the combination, actually. So with the new lenses and with the adapters, for example, I have the 800 right here, which I can totally handhold compared to the 800 original. So with this plus the doubler, and on the R5, I was able to capture a full moon last week that almost filled up my entire frame, actually. So I can actually share this real quick. See if it works.
I want to see that.
I want to see that too, yeah.
See if it doesn't crash up on me. Is it?
Hey.
There it is.
Wow.
So that's how it looks like, uncropped. That's straight
amazing.
from the camera. It's incredibly sharp, handheld the entire time, not a single tripod.
Wow. Wait. What were your settings then?
I was a slow shutter, maybe about, I gotta look at my mid tag. We're running out of time. But I was at f22. And this is a good example of the low light autofocusing kicking in, the in-camera stabilization helping me out, and the dual pixel autofocus to just kind of nail down the mood. So yeah.
That's so sick.
So things like that with the combination is really what I'm excited about with the new series.
Oh, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. I shot that same full moon, but I only had 200, and I was really hoping someone out there had something longer. So I'm glad it was you. I'm glad it was somebody I know.
That was 1600 right there. Like just boom.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. And Jonathan, what are you looking forward to when you imagine using this gear as you continue your creative journey?
I mean, I kind of touched on it before, but it's like a little robot, like a little AI robot that takes care of all the things that normally you're multitasking on, whether it's the autofocus or just making sure everything's dialed. So I think that impressed me most. I think sometimes it's easy to get, like Atiba said, you can get kind of cocky and think that you just got it locked. You've been doing something for forever, and you know how to use your gear and get what you want. But I think it's just going to free me up to be more creative and use my eye and see more compositions and do more of what I can do as the shooter, and let the camera kind of take care of the rest. So I'm excited for that. And like everybody's, Scott and Irene said, like video is always something I've had a little bit of an interest in. And so I think having a camera like this, that's also going to, do anything you'd want video wise is exciting as well. So that might be a whole nother realm of creativity that, something like this could unlock for me. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's exciting for me to see the threshold, kind of like an invitation to some of these great visual storytellers like yourself, like Scott, and like countless others, I'm sure, that haven't got into video, and this might give them that push towards it. And it's going to be great to see the results of that as people feel invited and equipped to be able to create new things. As someone who's following your work, I'm very, very much looking forward to that. So as we wrap up, first of all, we want to thank each of you who took the time to join us tonight to hear about these new products and how they've worked for us. We really appreciate you taking the time to engage in the chat and in the Q&A. It's really made this night special. If you want to engage with us on social media, you can tag Canon Canada, Canon USA, and Socality in your stories. We'll see them there. We'll be able to engage with you. If there's a question you really want answered that you missed, you can send it on there and we can track down an answer for you. So feel free to tag us there, show us where you're listening from. We can push that out there. If as you hear this, you're thinking, I need to get my hands on that, as I saw a bunch of people in the chat saying, you can feel free to pre-order. In Canada, I know that's directly through the dealers. We've got the link there in the chat for Canon Canada EOS R5 pre-order. Henaro, if someone is in the United States of America and they want to pre-order an R5 or an R6, how do they do that?
They can go to our Canon e-store and then should be up on our website hopefully already. So you should go over to our Canon e-store for any of your pre-order needs.
Perfect. So that's how you can get a hold of the gear. And in order to stay in touch with us at Socality and our events, as some of the restrictions ease up in Canada, we are looking to getting some in-person physical events before too long here. We're really looking forward to that. So stay tuned. And we also we're going to be continuing with our online workshops. We have one coming up on July 18th. Tell us about that, Scott.
Yes, July 18th and 22nd, we have a great photographer, Justin Wu, who is going to be doing an incredible workshop. So that is going to be going live next week. So you can sign up for that. And they are free. They're great to join. And we have people from all over the world that's coming up. And we also have some more workshops coming up here in the next couple of weeks as well. So stay tuned, sign up socality.org, and you will see more of those Socality times Canon Creator Lab workshops, as well as, like Zach mentioned, we are looking at getting back together as soon as we can, live and in person. And so I know in Canada, we are doing quite well. And so we're hopefully going to have some events. So stay tuned for that. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about the R5 and the R6 and these other great products through a lot of these great experiences that we're going to be hosting and showcasing. So it's been a great night, Zach. I have totally loved, and Henaro, just like, we need to take you everywhere, because I think someone even mentioned, wow, you're so fast, just like information coming at such a great speed.
It's from my Spanish. I talk rapidly.
Please just hang out with us, and so we can as always refer everything to you, because you are just a wealth of information. Can't thank you enough. And Atiba, thanks for joining us. I know a lot of people commented when we announced you just how much of a legend you are, and they've been following you for so many years, and just the respect and the adoration for you and for your work has been very well received and known. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. Just incredible shots, incredible knowledge, and you're an incredible person. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks to Canon Canada, Canon USA, and everybody. Please be safe too.
Yeah, that's great. And Irene, of course, incredible work. Amazing having you. You've been on a few of these, and so excited to see what you're going to continue to create. Someone says Irene is awesome, and we fully 100% agree.
So, thank you guys. Thank you guys. It's always a pleasure doing these with you.
Yeah.
Those light painting shots were something absolutely like I couldn't believe it.
And Jonathan's photos, by the way, just absolutely insane. He told me, he goes, I'm going to go to the desert and shoot these shots. And he told me his concept. I'm like, okay. And then he comes back with these photos and I'm just like pulling my hair out of my head saying these are unreal.
I think everyone pulled some really, really amazing work. And it's a lot of hard work to do all of these things. So everyone, good job.
Yeah. Yes, everyone I'm honored to be with you guys. You guys all got such beautiful stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's it for tonight. So thank you, Canon USA, Canon Canada, everybody at Socality, and everybody in the chat. We'll see you at the future online workshops. Stay connected. Pre-order your R5. You guys are amazing. Have a great and safe night.
See you guys later.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.